The night began with a hush over the Drake estate, a silence so sharp it felt like glass beneath the feet. Harper Avery, 7 months pregnant and cradling her 8-month-old daughter Ella, stepped through the grand entryway with a heart pounding in her throat. She had come only to ask her husband, Colton Drake, for help with her mother's medical bills. Instead, she found him in the middle of an intimate celebration with Riley Monroe, the woman whose perfume now drifted through every corner of their home. Colton looked up with a coldness that froze Harper where she stood, as if she were an intruder in her own life. Harper's breath trembled as she tried to explain why she came, her voice barely rising above a whisper. But Colton didn't listen. His rage ignited instantly, fueled by Riley's smirk and the champagne still clinging to the rim of his glass. He called Harper a burden, a shadow, a woman who should have stayed out of his way. The cruelty in his voice cut deeper than anything she had feared. Ella whimpered softly, sensing the storm gathering in the room. Harper tightened her hold, praying Colton would calm down, praying he would remember the vows he once made. But the man staring back at her was no longer the husband she knew. Riley stepped closer, her eyes bright with triumph. She whispered something into Colton's ear, and whatever it was sharpened his expression into pure contempt. In one violent motion, Colton lunged forward. His hand struck Harper's face, leaving burning streaks across her skin. Ella screamed. Harper stumbled back, trying to shield her baby, but Colton grabbed her hair, yanked her forward, and shoved her so hard her knees smashed against the marble floor. Pain shot through her belly. Panic flooded her chest. Riley let out a soft laugh, a cruel sound that echoed against the chandelier above them. Harper wanted to run, but her body wouldn't respond. Colton's fury didn't stop. He pointed at the door and told Harper to leave his house forever, claiming she was nothing more than an inconvenience he had tolerated for too long. He threatened to take Ella away, to erase Harper from their lives completely. Tears blurred Harper's vision, but she refused to release her daughter. She rose slowly, trembling from head to toe, determined to protect the small life in her arms and the one still growing inside her. She tried to speak, to plead, to remind him she was his wife, but her voice cracked and died before the words could form. Colton turned away as if she no longer existed. As Harper staggered toward the door, her cheek blazing, her pulse frantic, the cold night air seeped in through the cracks of the entryway. She felt powerless, abandoned, and desperately alone. Riley wrapped her arms around Colton, whispering promises of a future without Harper's burdens. For a moment Harper thought this was how her story would end, cast out and broken, with no one to call her own. But just as she reached for the door handle, a low rumble shook the driveway outside. Headlights flooded the windows. A fleet of black Cadillac SUVs lined the path, engines growling like a warning. Someone powerful had arrived, and the entire estate seemed to hold its breath. What happened next would shatter Colton's world forever. Harper Avery had never imagined that the woman she had become pregnant, exhausted, and pushed to the edge would need to rely on strength she didn't even know she had. As she stepped outside the Drake estate with Ella clinging to her shoulder, the cold California night wrapped around her like a punishment. Her palms were shaking, her face burned where Colton had struck her, and her knees still throbbed from the fall. She didn't know where to go. Colton had frozen her cards earlier that week under the excuse of mismanaging household expenses. She had no cash, no car, and no one to call. She was trapped in a life her husband had carefully designed to keep her powerless. But the rumbling engines in the driveway made her pause. Harper turned slowly, her breath fogging in the air. A convoy of black Cadillac SUVs had lined up before the estate gates. Their headlights cut sharp beams across the yard, turning the garden statues into eerie silhouettes. For a moment, Harper thought Colton had called security to force her out completely, but these vehicles looked different, sleek, armored, and carrying a presence that made the entire property vibrate. The doors of the first SUV opened in unison. Men in tailored black suits stepped out, each wearing earpieces and moving with the precision of federal agents. Harper froze, clutching Ella tighter, unsure whether she should run or stand her ground. Inside the house, Riley's shrill voice echoed. She was asking Colton what was happening, but he didn't have an answer. He stormed toward the front door, shoving past furniture as he shouted for his head of security. When he swung open the door, The color drained from his face. Two men approached him, unfazed by his anger. They asked to speak with him immediately and without interruption. Colton bristled, demanding to know who they were, but his voice cracked when he saw the insignia on their badges, Avery Holdings, an international financial entity he had once tried and failed to partner with. Harper stepped back into the courtyard, confusion swirling through her mind. She had heard the name Avery Holdings somewhere before, maybe in conversations Colton had had about investors he feared. But why were they here? One of the men finally turned toward her. His tone softened as he addressed her directly. "Miss Avery, we're here for you." The words hit her like a wave. Miss Avery, not Mrs. Drake, not Harper the burden. Harper struggled to process it. Colton shot her a stunned glare, as if he couldn't comprehend why powerful men would be addressing his wife with respect he had never shown her. Before he could speak, another SUV door opened. An older man stepped out, his silver hair illuminated under the streetlights, his posture steady and dignified. The moment his eyes landed on Harper, something shifted. His face softened with a mixture of sorrow and longing. "Harper," he said, voice cracking with emotion, "it's me, your father." The ground seemed to slip beneath her feet. Harper staggered, clutching Ella closer. Her father had been dead her entire life, or so she believed. Tears welled in her eyes as she stared at him, unable to breathe, unable to think, unable to form any words. Every truth she had known felt like it had shattered at once. Harper felt the world tilt as destiny rewrote itself around her in that moment. And Colton realized in that instant that the woman he had tried to destroy was not the powerless wife he imagined, but the heir to a power he could never hope to control. Harper's legs trembled as she struggled to understand what was happening. The man calling himself her father stood only a few steps away, yet the distance between them felt impossible to cross. She had grown up believing he died before she was born, a tragic story her mother never fully explained. Now he was here surrounded by men who moved with the authority of a private security force, their presence turning the Drake estate into something foreign. Ella whimpered against her shoulder, sensing the tension. Harper swallowed hard, unsure whether to trust her eyes or brace for another painful blow. Leonard Avery stepped closer, his movements careful, almost fearful that Harper might vanish if he came too fast. He introduced himself with a quiet sincerity that didn't fit the world of wealth and power surrounding him. Harper stared at him, searching for traces of familiarity. The shape of his eyes, the angle of his jaw, pieces matched, but fear tangled with doubt. Colton barged forward, shouting demands, insisting they leave his property immediately. Leonard's guards stepped in, forming a silent wall that made Colton's authority evaporate. For the first time, Harper watched her husband realize he no longer controlled the moment. Harper tightened her hold on Ella as Leonard finally said the words that shattered every certainty she had left. He explained that he never abandoned her mother, but was forced into hiding after uncovering a financial conspiracy within Avery Holdings that threatened their lives. To protect Harper, he severed all ties and survived through shadows until he could return safely. Harper listened in stunned silence, her heart beating painfully. Everything she believed about her past was wrong. She wasn't alone, and she wasn't without protection. The knowledge hit her like a tidal wave, both comforting and terrifying at once. Colton scoffed loudly, calling the story pathetic and accusing Leonard of staging an act to manipulate Harper. But Harper saw the flicker of fear in her husband's eyes, a fear he couldn't mask behind arrogance. He demanded the guards arrest Leonard for trespassing, yet none moved. The power he relied on for years was useless against the men standing before him. Leonard approached Harper again, gently asking if she would leave with him so they could talk somewhere safe. Harper hesitated, torn between desperation and disbelief. She had endured so much isolation that choosing trust felt nearly impossible. Harper took a slow breath, feeling the bruise on her cheek pulse with every heartbeat. Ella shifted in her arms, seeking warmth and safety. That tiny movement made Harper's decision for her. She realized that staying with Colton meant surrendering to more cruelty, more fear, and more control. Leaving with Leonard offered uncertainty, but at least it wasn't built on violence. She nodded faintly, almost unable to lift her chin. Leonard's relief showed instantly, though he remained careful, giving her space. The guards stepped aside, creating a path toward the waiting vehicles. Harper felt her knees weaken. Behind her, Colton exploded with rage, shouting threats and demanding she return inside immediately. His voice cracked with a desperation Harper had never heard before. But it was too late. The balance of power had shifted. She no longer trembled at his words. She no longer bent to his temper. Harper climbed into the SUV with Ella held close, her breath trembling yet determined. As the door closed behind her, she saw Colton being restrained by the guards, his face twisted in disbelief. In that instant, Harper understood that her nightmare was ending, and Colton's was just beginning. The future was finally hers to reclaim. The SUV pulled away from the Drake estate as Harper trembled silently. Ella rested against her shoulder, breathing softly despite the surrounding chaos. Leonard sat across from them, hands folded, eyes filled with fragile hope. Harper avoided his gaze, unsure whether she could trust a stranger. Memories of Colton's violence still flashed through her mind like lightning. She pressed her cheek against Ella's hair, grounding herself through motherhood. The convoy traveled through Beverly Hills, passing manicured hedges and glowing mansions. Harper felt displaced, as if her world had shifted beyond recognition. Leonard finally spoke, his voice gentle but shadowed by years of secrecy. He explained how threats against their family forced him into hiding years ago. Harper listened carefully, though her heart remained guarded due to past betrayal. She asked why her mother never revealed the truth, despite countless lonely nights. Leonard answered quietly, saying her mother feared danger would return unexpectedly. Harper closed her eyes, imagining her mother carrying burdens she never understood. The SUV turned onto a private road leading toward a secluded compound. Guards opened steel gates that glided back with impressive mechanical precision. Harper felt her anxiety surge again, unsure of the world she was entering. Inside the compound, modern stone buildings stood among carefully sculpted gardens. It looked nothing like the sterile wealth surrounding Colton's lonely empire. The moment Harper stepped out, several staff members greeted her respectfully. Their calm expressions offered comfort she hadn't felt in months or years. Leonard guided her into a warm room filled with soft light and quiet. Harper settled on a couch, still holding Ella protectively against her chest. Leonard took a seat across from them, careful not to overwhelm her. He revealed documents proving her legal identity as sole Avery family heir. Harper stared at the papers, struggling to reconcile truth with lifelong misconceptions. Her hands shook while she traced her name, printed in bold lettering. Leonard explained that her inheritance included shares in global corporations worldwide. Among them were controlling stakes in companies Colton had desperately pursued unsuccessfully. Harper's breath caught when Leonard mentioned Drake Innovations specifically by name. She learned the Avery family quietly owned 19% of Colton's corporation. That information alone could change everything about the power dynamic between them. Harper's voice trembled as she asked what Leonard expected from her now. Leonard replied simply, saying he wanted nothing except her safety and freedom. Harper felt tears burning as she remembered Colton's threats to take Ella. She looked at her daughter sleeping peacefully, unaware of surrounding turmoil. Harper realized she could never return to the life she once endured. Leonard assured her that legal teams were ready to protect her rights. He said evidence from the estate's cameras had already been retrieved discreetly. Colton's violent actions were recorded clearly, leaving no room for manipulation. Harper felt a flicker of hope rising from beneath layers of exhaustion. Yet fear still lingered, warning her that Colton would retaliate aggressively. She knew her husband's pride wouldn't allow public humiliation without resistance. Harper clenched her jaw, determined to shield Ella from further harm forever. Leonard promised she wouldn't face the next steps alone or unprepared. His calm certainty steadied her, offering strength she desperately needed now. Harper realized this sanctuary might become the beginning of her true life. She inhaled deeply, letting the silence settle around her like reassurance. Tomorrow she would confront a world that once tried to break her, but tonight she allowed herself a moment of fragile, unfamiliar safety. Harper kissed Ella's forehead, whispering promises she intended to keep. Hope finally felt real again tonight. Morning light filtered gently through the tall windows of the Avery compound, casting warm gold across the living room where Harper sat holding Ella close. She hadn't slept much. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw Colton's face twisted with rage, felt his hand striking her, heard Riley's laughter echoing like a cruel promise. Harper brushed a shaking hand over her cheek, still tender from the attack. Ella stirred and pressed closer, unaware of the storm that had nearly torn her life apart. Harper looked around the quiet room, trying to ground herself in the safety she'd been given. Yet fear lingered deep in her chest, like a bruise that wouldn't fade. Leonard entered carrying 2 cups of warm herbal tea, his expression gentle but strained. He watched Harper carefully, as if afraid she might disappear again. She accepted the tea and whispered a soft thank you. They sat in silence for a moment, letting the quiet settle between them. But peaceful moments never lasted long in situations like hers. A guard stepped into the room with a tablet in hand, clearing his throat softly. "Sir, we have an update on Drake Innovations," he said. Leonard took the tablet, brows tightening as he read the incoming report. Harper's heart thudded painfully. "Is it about Colton?" she asked, her voice barely steady. Leonard nodded grimly and handed her the device. Harper read the headlines, splashed across financial news feeds. Colton had called an emergency board meeting. He'd announced that Harper had run off with their child and claimed she had become mentally unstable during pregnancy. He insisted he needed full legal custody of Ella and the company's support to track Harper down. Harper's stomach twisted as she imagined him spinning lies with the same confidence he once used to charm crowds. Tears pricked her eyes, not from weakness but from fury she had suppressed for too long. "He's going to try to take Ella," she whispered. Leonard placed a steady hand on her shoulder and told her the truth. Colton had already filed an urgent motion with a judge he had long manipulated through donations. Harper felt the room tilt. Her worst fear had become real. Colton had always known which strings to pull, which faces to smile at, which pockets to fill. Harper held Ella tighter, heart racing. Leonard leaned forward, meeting Harper's frightened gaze. "He won't win," he said firmly. "Not this time." He explained that Avery Holdings had already mobilized a legal team with evidence collected from the Drake estate cameras. They had footage of the assault, the verbal threats, the shove, and Harper falling to her knees while pregnant. They also had proof Colton froze her accounts and attempted to isolate her. Harper listened in stunned silence, realizing the nightmare she lived through was now her strongest defense. Still, fear crawled along her spine. Colton was vicious when cornered. Harper remembered nights when he came home angry from work, blaming her for everything going wrong in his life. She remembered times he had belittled her dreams, dismissed her tears, ignored her pain. If he felt his empire slipping away, he would strike harder than ever. Harper lifted her chin, steadying herself. "I won't let him take her from me," she said with a quiet fierceness that surprised even Leonard. He nodded with pride and told her it was time to prepare for the next step. Avery Holdings wanted her to give a statement, one that would serve as the foundation for their legal battle. Harper felt the weight of that responsibility pressing on her shoulders. She wasn't ready, not emotionally, not mentally, but she had no choice. Ella's safety depended on it. Harper wiped her tears and stood, gathering her strength. She had been silent for too long. Now she would tell the truth, and the truth would become the weapon Colton never saw coming. Harper followed Leonard and the legal team into a conference room inside the Avery compound, her pulse thudding with a raw mixture of dread and determination. The space was sleek but warm, filled with rich wood tones instead of the cold steel she'd grown used to in Colton's world. Ella slept quietly in a bassinet beside her, oblivious to the mounting chaos surrounding her young life. Harper smoothed a hand over her daughter's blanket, grounding herself in the tiny rise and fall of the baby's breaths. This was why she had to keep fighting. This was why she couldn't crumble now. A woman in her early 40s stepped forward, offering a gentle handshake. "Miss Avery, I'm Claire Hensley, lead counsel. We're here to protect you." Her voice was steady, confident, the kind that could hold up an entire courtroom. Harper nodded, though her hands shook. Claire opened a folder, revealing images from the Drake estate's internal cameras, angles Harper had never seen before. She watched herself being struck, shoved, falling to the marble floor while pregnant. Her stomach twisted painfully. Even though she lived through that moment, seeing it replayed with cold, clinical clarity made her gasp. Leonard placed a reassuring hand on her arm, but Harper couldn't tear her gaze from the footage. Riley's smirk, Colton's fury, the fear in her own eyes. Claire explained they would use every second of it. Harper swallowed hard and forced herself to breathe as Claire continued outlining Colton's strategy. He had petitioned the court for emergency custody, claiming Harper had abandoned her marital duties and was an unfit mother suffering from psychological instability. Harper's jaw tightened. She remembered every time Colton called her dramatic, hysterical, overreacting. He'd prepared this narrative long before he ever laid a hand on her. "We're filing a counter-petition today," Claire said. "You'll give a formal recorded statement. It will be safeguarded, time-stamped, and delivered to the court before Colton can manipulate the system." Harper felt the weight of responsibility pressing heavily against her ribs. She wasn't afraid of telling the truth, she was afraid of reliving it. But she would rather walk through fire than let Colton take Ella. Leonard leaned forward, his tone gentle. "Harper, your voice matters now more than ever." She nodded once, firming her resolve. Claire set up a camera and asked Harper to start from the beginning. Harper's throat tightened. She took a shaky breath, eyes fixed on her sleeping child, and began speaking. She recounted the years of subtle insults, the isolation, the financial control, the emotional manipulation. She detailed the bruises hidden beneath long sleeves, the nights she cried alone, the whispered threats Colton made when he felt she didn't meet his impossible expectations. Her voice cracked when she described the moment he shoved her while she held Ella, how terror stabbed through her as she collapsed to her knees. Tears streamed freely down her cheeks, yet she did not pause. She refused to let shame silence her again. Claire listened without interruption, occasionally jotting notes, while Harper poured years of pain into a testimony that would become the backbone of their case. When she finished, the room was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. Claire reached over and pressed a gentle hand to Harper's. "You were incredibly brave. This will help protect your daughter." Harper exhaled slowly, exhaustion washing through her, but beneath it burned a spark of strength she hadn't known she possessed. As Claire saved the video file, a guard rushed into the room, urgency tightening his features. He whispered something to Leonard, whose expression darkened instantly. Leonard turned toward Harper with grave eyes. "Colton just made his next move. And it's worse than we expected." Harper's breath hitched. The war had officially begun. Colton Drake was never a man who accepted defeat quietly. When he realized Harper had vanished from his estate, fury ignited like gasoline striking flame. He stormed into his private office, slamming doors so hard the walls shook. Riley hovered nervously, sensing this was no longer a game she controlled. Colton barked orders at his staff, demanding they locate Harper immediately. Within minutes, he learned something that froze the blood in his veins. She had left with men bearing the Avery insignia, an emblem he recognized from boardrooms and global negotiations. His jaw clenched so tightly Riley stepped back. "Why does that name matter?" she asked cautiously. Colton didn't answer. He didn't dare. Instead, he called his legal team and ordered them to escalate the custody petition. If Harper wanted a war, he would strike first. Meanwhile, inside the Avery compound, Harper stood frozen as Leonard revealed the news, stirring the entire team. "Colton filed an emergency claim stating you're a danger to Ella," Leonard said. Harper felt the world tilt. "He's using the same lies he fed me for years," she whispered. Claire approached, placing documents on the table. "He submitted psychological evaluations from doctors you've never met, all forged. He's panicking." Harper steadied her breathing. She refused to let fear undo her progress. "What do we do now?" she asked. Claire nodded. "We move faster. We'll file your evidence, request judicial review, and expose his misconduct. But there's more." Leonard hesitated before continuing. "One of our investigators intercepted communication from someone inside Drake Innovations. Colton is planning to relocate Ella to an undisclosed property in Nevada." Harper's heart nearly stopped. "He wouldn't." Claire's eyes hardened. "He would. And if he gets her across state lines before the injunction is approved, the process becomes significantly harder. Harper clutched Ella's blanket, panic rising like fire. We can't let him take her. Leonard stepped closer. We won't. But Harper, there's something you need to see. He handed her a sealed envelope. Harper opened it slowly, revealing financial records, secret transfers, and documents proving Colton had embezzled millions over several years. Harper stared in disbelief. Why would he hide this? Claire answered, voice steady. Because if this reaches federal regulators, he's finished. And he knows Avery Holdings has the power to expose everything. Harper felt strength surge through her. For the first time, she wasn't hiding from Colton, he was hiding from her. Leonard gave a grave nod. This is our leverage. Harper inhaled deeply. Then let's use it. Claire turned toward the door with urgency. Prepare the team. Everything changes today. As Harper gathered Ella into her arms, determination replaced fear. She had endured humiliation, violence, and betrayal, but now she held the truth Colton never expected. Harper straightened her shoulders. He tried to destroy me, she said quietly. But he forgot one thing. Leonard asked softly. What's that? Harper looked toward the window, voice steady with rising resolve. I'm not the woman he controlled anymore. Claire opened the door as guards prepared to mobilize. Harper stepped forward, cradling Ella securely. Her next words carried enough force to reshape everything. And I'm done being afraid. Outside, engines roared as the next phase of their retaliation began. Harper tightened her grip on her daughter, ready for whatever came next. In her chest, strength bloomed where fear once lived. The battle for her future had begun, and this time, she wasn't fighting alone. Harper turned toward Claire. Let's finish this. The room erupted into motion. Everything was about to change. And for the first time, Harper welcomed the storm. Because she had the power, Harper stood before the mirror inside the Avery compound's private preparation suite, staring at the bruised, exhausted woman reflected back at her. For years, she had avoided mirrors, afraid to face the version of herself shaped by Colton's anger and Riley's cruelty. But today was different. Today she wasn't preparing to hide. She was preparing to rise. A stylist quietly pinned her hair back, while a guard waited outside the door, ready to escort her to the meeting where everything would shift in her favor. Harper inhaled deeply, feeling strength slowly replace the tremor in her chest. Claire entered holding several documents and a phone. Your sworn testimony is officially submitted, she said. The court acknowledged it. The judge is reviewing your emergency protection request right now. Harper nodded, clutching Ella's tiny hand as the baby cooed softly from her carrier. For a moment, Harper allowed herself to simply breathe. She wasn't powerless anymore. She wasn't trapped inside Colton's structure of control. She was stepping into a battlefield, armed with the truth and the power of a family legacy she had never known she possessed. Leonard appeared next, dressed in a crisp suit that matched the urgency in his posture. Are you ready? He asked. Harper adjusted the lapels of her blazer, a tailored piece the stylist insisted symbolized strength. I'm ready, she said, though fear flickered beneath her ribs. Leonard offered a reassuring smile, then led her toward the elevator. Guards surrounded them, forming a protective barrier Harper wasn't used to. It felt strange to be defended instead of dismissed, protected instead of controlled. The elevator doors closed, humming softly as they descended. They entered a secure conference hall filled with legal teams, investigators, and Avery executives. Maps and documents covered the screens along the walls. Claire moved to the front, addressing the room. Colton is attempting to relocate Ella. We need to secure an emergency injunction by noon. Harper tightened her grip on her daughter's carrier. The thought of losing Ella sent a cold wave through her. She stepped closer to Claire. What do you need from me? Claire met her gaze. Courage and clarity. An investigator signaled Harper over. We found correspondence between Colton and Riley, he said, showing her printed messages. Harper read the lines describing how they planned to push her into a breakdown, how they mocked her fears, how Riley encouraged Colton to provoke her into emotional instability. Harper's stomach twisted, but she didn't look away. This ends today, she whispered. Claire reviewed the final filings. The judge scheduled a virtual emergency hearing in 30 minutes. You'll speak briefly. Be honest, steady, and clear. Harper nodded, though her heart thudded painfully. Leonard placed a warm hand on her shoulder. You're stronger than you know, he murmured. Harper offered a faint smile. I'm learning. As the team prepared the room for the hearing, an assistant rushed in. Update, he called. Everyone turned. Colton just arrived at the courthouse. He's trying to push the judge into ruling before our evidence is reviewed. Tension spiked instantly. Claire grabbed her laptop. We're logging in now. He won't get away with it. The screen illuminated as the judge appeared, stern and composed. Colton's attorney joined beside him, already arguing with aggressive confidence. When the judge asked for Harper, Claire gestured for her to step forward. Harper held Ella close, lifted her chin, and spoke with a steadiness that surprised even herself. She recounted the truth with calm detail, describing the violence, the fear, the isolation, and the threat to her daughter's safety. The judge listened intently. Then she delivered her decision. Temporary sole custody is granted to Miss Harper Avery, effective immediately. Harper's knees nearly buckled. Across the screen, Colton's face drained of all color. And for the first time, Harper felt what power truly tasted like. The ruling shook the foundation of Colton Drake's carefully constructed world. While Harper held Ella close, absorbing the judge's words with trembling relief, Colton erupted in the courthouse hallway. Reporters swarmed him, cameras flashing like lightning, catching every second of his unraveling. Riley tugged at his sleeve, whispering frantic excuses, but he shoved her aside, fury boiling beyond reason. Harper watched the live stream on a monitor in the Avery compound, her breath shallow as she saw the man who once controlled her fall apart in front of the entire city. For years, he silenced her. Now his rage was broadcast for millions to witness. Claire muted the audio, turning to the team. This reaction only strengthens our case, she said. Harper nodded, though her hands still shook. She wasn't celebrating yet. She knew Colton's desperation would make him dangerous. Leonard tapped a folder on the table. We move forward with exposing the financial crimes. Harper inhaled deeply. Let's finish it. Within hours, Avery investigators compiled a final dossier evidence of offshore accounts, shell companies, and funds funneled into personal luxuries disguised as business expenses. Harper stared at the numbers, stunned by how much deceit he'd built beneath their marriage. Claire slid the folder toward her. You'll deliver this during the board confrontation. Harper blinked. Me? Leonard nodded. The board needs to hear from the one person Colton underestimated the most. As evening settled over Los Angeles, the Avery convoy departed for Drake Innovations headquarters. The sleek glass tower glowed against the dusk, its reflective surface shimmering like an empire built on fragile lies. Harper stepped out of the SUV, wearing a tailored black suit that carried both elegance and finality. Ella stayed behind with trusted staff. Harper needed a clear mind for what came next. Inside, employees whispered as she passed, their eyes widening. Rumors had already spread. The wife Colton tried to break had become the storm approaching his throne. The boardroom doors opened to a room buzzing with tension. Executives sat rigidly, whispering among themselves until Harper entered with Leonard and Claire. At the far end of the table, Colton stood, jaw clenched, Riley at his side looking pale and shaken. You don't belong here, he snapped. Harper didn't flinch. According to corporate records, I do. She placed the dossier on the table. Colton's eyes narrowed. What is this? Harper met his glare with steady resolve. The truth you hoped would stay buried. Claire activated a screen displaying charts, emails, and financial trails. Gasps rippled through the room as evidence unfolded. Leonard added each detail with strategic precision. Harper spoke clearly, explaining how company funds were diverted into luxury trips, unauthorized bonuses, and personal real estate. Colton slammed his fist on the table. Lies. She's trying to destroy me. Harper held his gaze. You destroyed yourself, the moment you believed no one could stop you. The board members exchanged grim looks. One cleared his throat. Mr. Drake, these records are undeniable. Another added, your conduct places the entire corporation at risk. Riley suddenly stepped away from Colton, hands raised defensively. I didn't know about any of this, she stammered, eyes darting toward the exit. It was a lie, and everyone knew it. The chairman finally spoke. Effective immediately, Colton Drake is removed as CEO. The words cracked through the room like a gavel. Colton's face drained. You can't do this. It's done, the chairman replied. Security approached him. Harper stepped back, heart pounding as she watched the man who terrorized her lose everything he once wielded like a weapon. Colton pointed at her, voice breaking. This isn't over. Harper turned away, calm and resolute. Yes, Colton, it is. And the empire he built on fear crumbled at her feet. The night air outside Drake Innovations felt different, lighter, sharper. Almost cleansing as Harper stepped out of the towering glass building. She paused at the top of the marble steps, breathing in deeply while the city lights shimmered below like scattered diamonds. For the first time in years, she didn't feel small. She didn't feel trapped. She didn't feel alone. Behind her, security escorted Colton through the lobby, his protests echoing uselessly against the walls that once amplified his power. Now his voice held no authority, no weight, no fear. Harper closed her eyes for a moment, letting the finality settle across her chest like a healing warmth. Leonard joined her, offering a quiet smile. It's over, he said gently. Harper exhaled, her shoulders lowering as if shedding a lifetime of invisible chains. It's strange, she whispered. I thought I'd feel triumphant, but I mostly feel tired. Leonard nodded. Victory often looks like peace, not noise. Harper placed a hand over her heart, steadying the emotional storm inside her. She wasn't celebrating because the bruises, physical and emotional, still lingered, but she was standing on her own 2 feet, unbroken. Claire approached next, holding her phone. The judge signed the order, she announced. You have full legal custody of Ella, permanently. Harper felt a rush of emotion so intense she pressed a hand to her mouth. Tears filled her eyes, but this time they weren't from fear, they were from release. Thank you, she whispered hoarsely. Claire shook her head. You did this, Harper. You saved yourself. As the Avery convoy prepared to take her home, Harper received a message from the staff watching Ella. It showed her daughter sleeping peacefully. Tiny fists curled, cheeks soft and warm beneath the nightlight's glow. Harper hugged the phone to her chest. Let's go home, she murmured. The drive back to the Avery compound felt unreal. The city glided past the tinted windows in slow-motion billboards, skyscrapers, traffic lights, each a reminder of the world she had survived. When the SUVs pulled through the steel gates, the compound glowed beneath soft lantern lights. Harper hurried inside, her footsteps echoing through the hallway as she rushed toward the nursery. Ella sat up in her crib, blinking sleepily. When Harper scooped her into her arms, the baby's warmth melted every last remnant of fear. Harper pressed her cheek to Ella's tiny forehead. We're safe now, she whispered, and no one will ever hurt us again. Later that night, Harper stepped onto the balcony overlooking the sprawling gardens. The moonlight shimmered across the stone railing. Leonard joined her, hands tucked into his pockets. Your mother would be proud, he said quietly. Harper swallowed hard. I hope so. Leonard looked at her with a mixture of regret and admiration. I failed you once by disappearing. I won't fail you again. Harper shook her head gently. You saved me today, and that's what matters now. They fell into a peaceful silence until footsteps approached. Isaac Hale, the cybersecurity expert who had spent the day helping the team dismantle Colton's schemes, stepped into the light. He looked hesitant, almost shy. Just checking in, he said softly. Wanted to make sure you're okay. Harper offered a tired but sincere smile. I think, for the first time in a long time, I am. Isaac nodded, eyes warm. You fought for yourself today. That's something powerful. Harper felt a flutter in her chest, small, hopeful, unexpected. Isaac bowed his head slightly. If you ever need anything, protection, help, or just someone who listens, you have me. Harper's breath caught, not from fear, from possibility. She looked back toward the moonlit garden, her voice steady and full of new strength. "I'm finally ready for a new life." And for the first time, she truly believed it. The morning after Colton's downfall arrived with a quietness Harper had forgotten existed. Sunlight spilled into her room at the Avery compound, warm and soft instead of harsh and artificial, like the lights in the Drake estate. Harper blinked awake to the gentle sound of Ella babbling in her crib. For the first time in months, maybe years, Harper woke without a jolt of fear. No footsteps pacing angrily down the hall. No cold voice accusing her of imagined failures. No dread curling in her stomach at the thought of surviving another day beside a man who thrived on her pain. Harper carried Ella into the living room, where the fragrance of fresh coffee drifted through the air. Leonard sat at the table, scrolling through financial updates with reading glasses perched on his nose. He looked up and smiled, a soft, genuine smile she wasn't used to receiving from any father figure, let alone the man whose absence shaped her entire life. "Good morning, sweetheart," he greeted. Harper hesitated at the endearment. Slowly, very slowly, she returned the smile. Before they could continue, Claire and several members of the legal team entered with documents in hand. "We have developments," Claire said, her tone crisp but positive. Harper's pulse quickened. "What happened?" Claire laid out a stack of printed screenshots and reports. "The media picked up everything, your testimony, the footage, Colton's removal. Public opinion is overwhelmingly on your side. And the board approved an internal audit." Harper exhaled in relief, but Claire wasn't finished. She tapped the final report. "And this might be the final blow." Harper leaned in. Claire continued. "A whistleblower from Drake Innovations came forward. Someone inside the company witnessed Colton planning to falsify documents for the custody case, as well as ordering the destruction of financial records." Harper's heart thudded. She didn't know who risked their career to help her, but gratitude warmed her chest. Colton's house of cards was collapsing without her lifting a finger. Leonard looked up from the report, pride shining in his eyes. "It means federal investigators are stepping in." Harper's breath hitched. "He could go to prison?" Claire nodded. "For a long time." Harper held Ella closer, feeling the last fragments of fear loosen their grip. The world felt different now, lighter, safer. She had walked through terror, and somehow she was still standing. Before the meeting ended, Claire added gently, "You'll need to make a public statement. Not about Colton, about your future. Your voice has become a symbol of strength for so many women." Harper stared at her, stunned. "People want to hear from me?" Claire smiled. "They need to." Later that afternoon, Harper stood before a small camera crew in the Avery compound's press room. A stylist fixed her hair while a technician adjusted lighting. Harper looked at her reflection in the monitor. She barely recognized the woman staring back, bruised but calm, weary yet unbroken. Harper inhaled deeply as the cameraman counted down. When the red light blinked on, she spoke not as the victim of a billionaire's cruelty, but as a woman reclaiming her dignity. "I spent years believing my voice didn't matter, believing I had to stay silent to keep my family together. But silence protects the wrong people. Today, I choose to speak, not for revenge, for healing for myself and my daughter." Her voice trembled, but she didn't stop. "No one, no matter how powerful, has the right to control you, hurt you, or take away your freedom. If you're living in fear, please know this: you deserve safety, you deserve love, and you deserve to be heard." The room fell silent when she finished. Claire whispered, "Beautiful." As Harper stepped away, someone appeared in the doorway, Isaac Hale, watching her with a quiet admiration that made her heartbeat flutter unexpectedly. "You were extraordinary," he said softly. Harper felt warmth bloom in her chest, and for the first time, she felt the future reaching for her, not with fear, but with promise. The days following Harper's public statement unfolded with a strange mixture of calm and intensity. News outlets replayed her speech repeatedly, calling her brave, calling her a voice for women who had suffered in silence. Harper tried not to watch, focusing instead on Ella's routines and the quiet rhythm of the Avery compound. Still, she felt the shift around her. People were listening to her now. People believed her. That alone felt like an entirely new world. Yet with every moment of peace came a reminder that her story wasn't finished. Colton wasn't finished either. Early one morning, Harper found Isaac working in the security control room. He was surrounded by monitors and streaming data, tracking every movement connected to Drake Innovations. Ella squealed happily when she saw him. Isaac smiled and lifted her gently, letting her tug at his shirt collar. Harper felt her heart soften. She hated how quickly she had grown comfortable around him, but comfort was something she had earned, and she wasn't ready to push it away. Isaac handed Ella back and pointed to a screen. "There's chatter," he said. "Someone loyal to Colton is planning something reckless." Harper felt her stomach tighten. "How reckless?" Isaac hesitated. "Reckless enough that we're increasing your protection detail today." Harper swallowed fear as memories of Colton's threats returned like ghosts. But Isaac squeezed her shoulder gently. "You're safe here, I promise." Later that morning, Leonard gathered the legal team for updates. Claire opened a folder containing new documents. "Federal investigators executed a search warrant on Drake Innovations," she announced. "They seized encrypted drives and financial logs. Colton is losing every shield he once had." Harper didn't smile, but relief passed across her features. She wasn't celebrating his downfall. She was celebrating survival. She was celebrating freedom. Leonard leaned forward. "There's another matter." Harper straightened. "What now?" He slid a document toward her. "Drake Innovations wants you to join the board." Harper blinked, stunned. "Me?" Leonard nodded. "You own significant shares through your inheritance. And after what happened, they believe you can restore the company's reputation." Harper looked at the page, overwhelmed. She had never dreamed of sitting on any board, let alone the board of the corporation that once served as Colton's kingdom. "I don't even know if I'm ready," she murmured. Leonard smiled gently. "Courage doesn't wait for readiness." That afternoon, Harper walked through the gardens with Ella sleeping in a stroller. The breeze rustled the leaves softly. For the first time, Harper allowed herself to think about the future, not just survival. A real future, a safe home, a stable life. Maybe even love again someday. When she reached the fountain, she saw Isaac waiting nearby. He approached slowly, giving her space, as always. "You look peaceful," he said quietly. Harper chuckled softly. "I'm trying." Isaac leaned against the railing. "Peace looks good on you." They talked for a while about small things, Ella's new habit of babbling constantly, the garden lights planned for winter, and the team's progress on securing more evidence. Harper felt a comfort she hadn't felt in years. Isaac wasn't trying to impress her. He wasn't trying to control her. He was simply there, steady, present, kind. As the sun dipped low, a guard hurried toward them. "Miss Avery," he called, voice urgent. Harper's pulse spiked. "What is it?" The guard handed her a phone. "The investigators found something, and you need to hear it." Harper pressed the device to her ear and listened as an agent explained the discovery. A hidden account linked directly to Riley, containing funds traced to fraudulent transactions under Colton's authority. Harper's breath froze. Riley hadn't just encouraged the abuse. She had been part of the criminal operations too. Harper lowered the phone slowly. The next phase wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about exposing every last accomplice who helped destroy her life. Harper stood frozen beneath the soft glow of the garden lights, the phone still warm in her hand. The investigator's words echoed through her mind, sharp and echoing like footsteps in an empty hallway. Riley wasn't just a manipulative distraction. She wasn't just the woman who whispered poison into Colton's ear. She had been helping him commit financial crimes, knowingly, willingly, greedily. Harper's pulse quickened as she replayed the moments Riley smirked at her pain, the times her voice dripped with venom, the laughter she let slip when Harper hit the floor that night. Now, all of it fit into a darker, more sinister puzzle. Isaac stepped forward when he saw her expression shift from shock to something harder. "Harper? What happened?" She swallowed tightly, her voice trembling. "They found an account, under Riley's name. She helped him steal." Isaac's jaw tightened. Of course she did. He signaled a guard, who hurried back toward the compound to alert Leonard and Claire. Harper gripped the stroller's handle, grounding herself as the wind brushed across her hair. Minutes later, she was back inside the conference room. Claire spread out the newly uncovered documents across the table. These transactions link Riley directly to the embezzlement scheme. She wasn't just benefiting, she was orchestrating parts of it. Harper stared at the bank statements. Riley's signature, Riley's approvals, Riley's messages confirming transfers. Each line burned with betrayal. Claire continued. This helps us. Tremendously. It shows a pattern of coordinated misconduct. Harper shook her head slowly. She taunted me while committing crimes behind the scenes. Leonard placed a hand on her back. Their cruelty wasn't just emotional, it was criminal. Before Harper could respond, a security alert flashed across one of the screens. Isaac tapped the keyboard, eyes narrowing. Colton is meeting with Riley right now. Harper's heart skipped. Where? Isaac zoomed in on the map. A private suite at the Sterling Hotel downtown. They're trying to plan their counterattack before the federal agents move. Claire exhaled sharply. We need to get ahead of them. Leonard nodded. We will. But Harper, there's something important you need to consider. She turned toward him slowly. Leonard continued, voice steady but serious. With this evidence, you could pursue charges not just for abuse, not just for embezzlement, but for conspiracy. You can dismantle everything they built together. But once you start, there's no going back. Their entire reputations, their careers, their futures ruined permanently. Harper hesitated. She wasn't a vindictive woman by nature. She had endured pain, humiliation, and isolation without seeking revenge. But this wasn't revenge. This was justice. This was protection. This was closure. Harper lifted her chin. Do it. Claire nodded, already drafting the necessary motions. The FBI will want a statement. They'll move fast. Harper's heartbeat echoed through her ears. She recalled the nights Riley flirted with Colton openly in their home, the way she mocked Harper's tears, the way she encouraged Colton to take Ella away. Harper touched her daughter's blanket gently. She tried to help him take my baby. Claire's eyes softened. And now she'll answer for it. Isaac moved closer, his voice low. You're doing the right thing. Harper closed her eyes briefly. I hope so. Isaac shook his head. I know so. Minutes later, the team connected with federal agents via secure line. Harper listened as they confirmed a warrant request was being prepared for both Colton and Riley. Hearing their names spoken with legal finality brought a strange mix of relief and disbelief. As the call ended, Harper stepped outside to the balcony, needing air. The sky above the compound was clear, stars scattered across the darkness. She let the night breeze cool her burning cheeks. Footsteps approached behind her. Isaac. You okay? He asked softly. Harper nodded slowly. I thought exposing Colton would be the hardest part. But exposing her? I didn't expect it to feel like this. Isaac moved beside her. Justice is never clean, but you're not doing this out of hate. You're doing it to protect yourself and Ella. Harper looked at him, eyes shimmering with intensity. She tried to destroy me, Harper whispered. And now, Isaac replied gently, you're finally strong enough to stop her. Harper turned her gaze back to the stars, and for the first time, she felt the tide shifting entirely in her favor. Rain swept across Los Angeles that night, turning the city into a blur of trembling lights as Harper sat in the back of the SUV beside Isaac, her pulse racing with the urgency of everything unfolding. Federal agents were already en route to the Sterling Hotel, preparing to confront Colton and Riley before they could escape. Harper clutched her phone, replaying the investigator's message, confirming the depth of Riley's involvement. Every detail felt heavier than the last. Isaac kept glancing toward her, worry etched across his features, but he didn't speak. He knew Harper needed space to breathe. Inside the Sterling Hotel, Colton paced the suite like a cornered predator, muttering curses under his breath. Riley sat near the minibar, her nerves fraying with every passing second. She had always believed Colton would protect her, But now that belief cracked under the weight of the investigation closing in. Colton slammed his fist against the counter, shouting about betrayal, about Harper, about Avery Holdings. Riley flinched. She remembered the warnings Harper had tried to voice months ago, warnings she mocked. Now those echoes haunted her. The truth was no longer avoidable. The law was closing around them, like iron jaws. Back at the compound, Harper watched the live security feed Isaac pulled up. Federal vehicles closed in on the hotel entrance, red and blue lights splashing across the pavement. Harper's chest tightened. She didn't want revenge. She wanted resolution. She wanted the fear to stop echoing through her bones. Leonard entered the room quietly, placing a supportive hand on her shoulder. "This is the moment everything shifts," he said. Harper nodded, though her throat tightened with nerves. She felt the weight of every year she endured, every bruise masked, every plea silenced. Tonight, the silence finally ended. Inside the hotel suite, the first knock thundered through the room. Riley shot to her feet, panic draining the color from her face. Colton stiffened. The second knock came with authority firm, final, undeniable. "Federal agents," a voice boomed. "Open the door." Riley backed away, whispering frantic prayers under her breath. Colton darted toward the balcony, but agents outside had already sealed the exits. The third knock turned into a battering ram strike. The door burst open as agents flooded the suite, weapons lowered but ready. Colton raised his hands, fury twisting his features. Riley dropped to her knees, sobbing. Harper watched the raid unfold through the feed. Her breath caught when she saw Colton shoved against the wall, handcuffs snapping around his wrists. He screamed her name like a threat, like a curse, like a final attempt to claw back control. But his voice held no power anymore. Riley was escorted out next, shaking uncontrollably, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Harper didn't feel triumph, only closure. Isaac stood beside her, arms crossed, gaze steady. "It's done," he murmured. Harper nodded slowly, tears gathering in her eyes. "I'm free," she whispered, barely trusting the words. Leonard entered quietly, his expression a mixture of relief and pride. He placed a gentle hand on Harper's back as the final images faded from the monitors. "This chapter is closed," he said softly. Harper exhaled a deep, shaking breath she felt she'd been holding for years. She glanced at Ella sleeping peacefully nearby, unaware her future had just been secured forever. Isaac touched Harper's arm lightly, offering steady reassurance. "Tomorrow," he said, "we start rebuilding." Harper looked between them, her father, her unexpected ally, and felt something warm growing where fear once lived. Hope. Real, steady hope. And for the first time, she allowed herself to believe she deserved it. At last, the aftermath of the arrests rippled through Los Angeles like an unexpected seismic wave. By morning, every major news outlet carried the story. Tech billionaire Colton Drake arrested on federal charges, and Riley Monroe named in massive fraud investigation. Harper sat in the Avery compound's sunlit dining room with a cup of untouched tea, Ella babbling happily in her high chair. The world outside buzzed with chaos, but inside, the house felt strangely calm, too calm for a heart still learning how to beat without fear. Harper tried to steady her breathing, reminding herself that danger was gone, that Colton and Riley were behind bars. But years of living under his shadow didn't disappear overnight. Leonard entered the room with a folder in his hand, wearing an expression Harper couldn't read, part pride, part seriousness. He set the folder on the table. "These are the final charges being recommended," he said gently. Harper hesitated before opening it. Line after line listed the crimes: embezzlement, fraud, conspiracy, domestic abuse, attempted parental abduction. Each word burned with the memory of a life she had survived. "It's over," Leonard added softly. Harper exhaled shakily. "I know. I never imagined justice would look like this." Leonard squeezed her hand. "Justice rarely looks the way we expect, but it always arrives." Before Harper could respond, Isaac appeared at the doorway, offering a small smile that softened the tension around her. "Security confirmed something you'll want to hear," he said. Harper straightened. What now? Isaac stepped closer. Colton tried to call someone from holding. He claimed he had leverage, but his call was recorded. Harper's pulse quickened. What leverage? Isaac shook his head reassuringly. Nothing real, just empty threats. He has no information, no allies, no access. His world is gone. Harper swallowed hard. So, he can't hurt us anymore? He can't hurt anyone, Isaac said firmly. For the first time, Harper believed it. Later that afternoon, Claire gathered Harper and the Avery legal team for one final debrief. The federal indictment will be released publicly tomorrow, she explained. This is the official end of his influence. Harper nodded slowly. What about Riley? Claire's expression hardened. She's cooperating, but only because she's terrified. She's facing years herself. Harper didn't feel pity. Riley had chosen her path, reveling in Harper's suffering. Actions had consequences. Claire added, "There's one more opportunity you should consider." She handed Harper another envelope. "Drake Innovations wants you to join the executive transition team. They trust you to stabilize the company." Harper blinked, stunned. "Me? Really?" Claire smiled. "You represent integrity and strength." That evening, Harper walked to the outdoor terrace overlooking the gardens, needing air. Cool wind brushed against her skin as she watched the city lights shimmer beyond the hills. Her old life felt distant, almost unreal. Isaac joined her quietly, hands in his pockets. "Long day?" he asked. Harper let out a tired laugh. "Long year." Isaac leaned beside her on the railing. "You know, most people wouldn't have survived what you did. But you didn't just survive. You changed the entire narrative." Harper stared at him, surprised by how deeply his words reached her. "I didn't think anyone would ever see me like that." Isaac met her gaze gently. "I do." For a moment, they stood in silence, comfortable, warm, unforced. Harper felt her heart shift, not painfully this time, but with possibility. She wasn't ready for anything more yet, but she wasn't afraid of it either. She looked up at the night sky, inhaling deeply. "For the first time," she whispered, "I feel like I can breathe again." Isaac nodded. "That's what freedom feels like." Harper closed her eyes, letting the truth settle into her bones. Tomorrow she would face a new world, one she would shape on her terms. But tonight, she allowed herself peace. Real peace. For the first time in years, Harper felt truly alive. Harper woke the next morning feeling a steadiness she had never known. The Avery compound hummed softly with distant footsteps and quiet voices. But inside her room, everything felt peaceful. Ella giggled from her crib, kicking happily as sunlight spilled across the floor. Harper lifted her, breathing in the sweet scent of morning innocence. Today wasn't just another step forward. It was the day she would confront the remnants of Colton's empire and decide what her own future should become. Leonard entered quietly, carrying a folder and offering a reassuring smile. "The board confirmed your appearance this afternoon," he said. "They're expecting your guidance on stabilizing operations." Harper nodded, feeling a flutter of nerves. "I'm ready," she replied, though uncertainty lingered beneath her determination. Isaac joined them moments later, tablet in hand, showing updated security reports. "Colton's allies are scrambling," he explained, "but none of them have the influence to interfere anymore." Harper exhaled, grateful for the reassurance. After breakfast, she walked through the gardens with Ella nestled against her shoulder, finding comfort in the rustling leaves and grounding quiet. Each step reminded her of everything she'd survived, every moment she refused to break. Isaac caught up to her near the fountain, offering a gentle smile. "How are you holding up?" he asked. Harper paused, choosing honesty. "Stronger than yesterday," she said, "but still learning how to trust the calm." Isaac nodded, his expression softening. "Calm takes practice." Harper let out a quiet laugh, surprised by how natural it felt. They continued walking until Leonard called them back inside for a briefing. Claire stood beside a projection screen displaying charts and transition plans. "This afternoon's meeting is crucial," she explained. Your voice will guide the company's restructuring. Harper took a seat, steadying herself as Claire reviewed talking points and legal protections. Every detail emphasized one truth: Harper now held real authority. As the hour approached, Harper changed into a tailored navy suit that symbolized confidence more than style. She kissed Ella's forehead before leaving her with trusted staff. Walking toward the convoy, Harper felt the same mix of fear and resolve she once carried into court, except now she wasn't defending herself, she was shaping the future. Isaac opened her door, meeting her gaze with steady reassurance. "You've got this," he said. Harper nodded, inhaling deeply as the engine started and the convoy moved forward. Downtown Los Angeles shimmered beneath the afternoon sun as the convoy approached Drake Innovation's towering headquarters. Employees gathered near the entrance, murmuring anxiously as Harper stepped out, her posture steady despite the weight of expectation. The boardroom awaited, filled with executives seeking guidance from the woman who had survived the company's darkest scandal. Harper walked through the corridors, memories flickering of nights she waited for Colton to come home, fearing every step. Now her footsteps echoed with purpose, not fear. As she entered the boardroom, silence settled. Every face turned toward her. Harper drew a calming breath and stepped into the center of the room. Claire's nod anchored her. "Thank you all for being here," Harper began, her voice steady. "Today isn't about the past. It's about rebuilding a company founded on integrity and respect." She paused, scanning the room. "And we begin that work now." For a moment, the room remained completely still, as though everyone recognized the weight of her words. Then slowly, board members nodded, one after another, signaling unity rather than division. Harper felt warmth spread through her chest, the first hint of confidence, not built on survival but on purpose. She realized she wasn't just stepping into leadership, reclaiming her life. The boardroom remained silent for a long moment after Harper finished speaking, as though the entire company were collectively holding its breath. Then a single executive, Mr. Stanton, a senior member who had once admired Colton, slowly rose from his seat. "Mrs. Avery," he said, clearing his throat, "your strength has shown us what real leadership looks like. Drake Innovations needs transparency, accountability, and humanity. You've demonstrated all three." Others murmured in agreement. Harper felt a flutter of disbelief. So many of these men and women had watched Colton terrorize her quietly for years, yet none had intervened. Still, she wasn't here to dwell on the past. She was here to direct the future. Claire stepped forward with a series of documents and motioned for Harper to join her at the head of the table. "We'll need your signature on the transition plan," she said. Harper swallowed her nerves and approached the chair that once belonged to Colton. Her fingers trembled slightly as she lowered herself into it, the physical symbol of everything she had overcome. As she picked up the pen, she caught sight of her reflection in the polished surface of the table. Gone was the frightened woman who once flinched at raised voices. The reflection staring back was steady, resolute, and entirely her own. She signed. A wave of finality and empowerment washed over her. Applause broke out around the room, soft at first, then stronger. Executives approached her to shake her hand, offering words of support and gratitude. Harper accepted each gesture with grace, though her heart remained grounded by a simple truth. None of this erased the pain she had endured, but it did prove she had survived it. After the meeting, Isaac waited outside the boardroom. His posture straightened when Harper emerged, his expression warm with pride. "How did it go?" he asked. Harper let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "Better than I expected," she said. "Worse than I feared." Isaac chuckled softly. "That sounds like leadership." They walked down the corridor together. Employees watched her respectfully, offering smiles and acknowledging nods. Harper felt her chest warm, with something she hadn't experienced in a long time: belonging. When they reached the lobby, Isaac stopped her gently. "You know," he said, eyes holding hers, "you handled that in a way few people could. You turned one of the darkest experiences of your life into strength." Harper looked down momentarily, humility softening her features. "I never wanted power," she said quietly. "I just wanted safety." Isaac nodded. "And now you have both." On the drive back to the Avery compound, the city outside the window glowed with evening lights. Harper watched the movement of people on sidewalks, the steady pulse of life continuing around her. For the first time, she didn't feel like a shadow among them. She felt present, whole. The SUV pulled through the compound gates, and Harper's heart lifted when she saw Ella being carried by a caretaker waiting near the entrance. Harper rushed to her daughter, lifting her into her arms. Ella squealed joyfully, little hands clinging to Harper's cheeks. "Hi, my baby," Harper whispered, kissing her forehead. "Mommy's home." Leonard stepped out onto the porch, watching them with quiet pride. "How did it go?" he asked. Harper shifted Ella on her hip. "I did what needed to be done," she replied. "Colton can never touch this company or us again." Later that night, after Ella was asleep, Harper stepped onto the balcony overlooking the city skyline. The air was cool and scented with jasmine from the garden below. Isaac joined her, holding 2 mugs of tea. He handed one to her. Harper smiled softly. "Thank you for being here today," she said. Isaac leaned against the railing beside her. "I'm here because you deserve someone in your corner." Harper looked out at the city lights, shimmering like distant stars. For the first time in her life, the world felt like it belonged to her, and she was finally ready to claim it. The following week unfolded like a quiet sunrise, slow, gentle, and almost unreal. Harper found herself settling into a rhythm she once believed she'd never experience. Peaceful mornings with Ella, strategy meetings at Drake Innovations, dinners with Leonard where laughter replaced years of silence, and moments with Isaac that stirred something warm and unfamiliar inside her chest. Yet beneath the calm, she sensed a shift coming, a new chapter waiting to open, not defined by survival, but by growth. One afternoon, Harper sat in the Avery compound's library, reviewing documents for the company's restructuring plan. Ella played on a soft rug nearby, giggling as she banged 2 wooden blocks together. The sound was light, innocent, a reminder of everything Harper was fighting for. She looked toward her daughter and felt a wave of gratitude so deep it nearly brought her to tears. This was her life now. Safe, stable, free. A knock sounded at the door. Isaac entered, carrying a tablet and wearing that warm, steady expression that made the room feel brighter. "Busy?" he asked. Harper smiled softly. "Always, but I don't mind it anymore." He glanced at Ella before taking a seat across from Harper. "I wanted to show you something," he said, sliding the tablet toward her. Harper's eyes widened as she studied the screen. The news headline read, "Federal prosecutors secure indictment against former tech CEO and associate." Beneath it was a detailed summary of Colton and Riley's charges, official, final, and damning. Harper's breath caught softly. "It's really happening," she murmured. Isaac nodded. "You won." Harper closed her eyes for a moment, absorbing the magnitude of the moment. She didn't feel giddy or triumphant. She felt released. A weight she'd carried for years dissolved piece by piece. When she opened her eyes again, Isaac watched her gently. "How do you feel?" he asked. Harper thought carefully. "Lighter," she whispered. "Like I finally get to choose who I become next." Before Isaac could respond, Leonard entered the library, excitement brightening his features. "There's someone here to see you," he said. Harper looked up curiously. "Who?" Leonard stepped aside with a small smile. A woman Harper hadn't seen in months, her mother's oldest friend. Margaret stood in the doorway. Harper's heart fluttered. Margaret had been there for her after her mother's passing, offering comfort and guidance when Harper had no one else. Seeing her now felt like reconnecting with a lost piece of home. Margaret approached and embraced Harper tightly. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered. "I've watched everything on the news. Your mother would be so proud of you." Harper's throat tightened. She hadn't allowed herself to think about her mother in the whirlwind of recent events. But hearing her mentioned now made tears gather in her eyes. "I hope so," Harper said softly. Margaret nodded. "She always knew you had strength inside you. Now the world sees it too." They sat together while Harper recounted the journey, the terror, the revelations, the victory. Margaret listened with compassion and admiration. When Harper finished, Margaret placed a hand over hers. "It's your turn to live now," she said. "Not just survive." After Margaret left, Harper lingered in the quiet library. Isaac remained, watching her with gentle patience. He stepped toward her slowly. "There's something else," he said quietly. Harper turned, curious but calm. Isaac hesitated before continuing. "You've been through so much, and I don't want to rush anything. But I care about you, Harper. And not because of what you survived or what you've built. I care because of who you are." Harper's breath softened. She hadn't expected this, not now, not so soon, but the sincerity in his voice wrapped around her like warmth on a cold night. She didn't step back. She didn't freeze. Instead, she felt her heart open, just a little. "Isaac," she whispered, "I'm not ready for anything big, but I'm not afraid anymore." Isaac smiled gently. "That's enough." As Harper looked at him, truly looked, she realized something profound. Maybe love wasn't a wound. Maybe it could be a beginning. Harper didn't sleep much that night, but for the first time, it wasn't because of fear. Her thoughts drifted between Ella's soft breathing, the warmth in Isaac's eyes, and the astonishing realization that her life was no longer a battle for survival. It was a blank canvas, one she could finally paint freely. At sunrise, she stepped onto her balcony, watching soft gold spill across the city. The breeze brushed her hair, cool and gentle, and Harper closed her eyes. She felt grounded. Whole. Ready. Later that morning, Harper met Leonard and Claire in the Avery compound strategy room. The boards were covered in charts and transition plans for Drake Innovations. But Leonard's expression held something different today, something softer. "We have news," he said. Claire handed Harper a document. "This is the final confirmation. Colton and Riley have both accepted plea deals. They'll serve lengthy sentences." Harper exhaled slowly, a quiet release of the last thread of tension she'd been carrying. "So it's done," she murmured. Claire nodded. "It's done. For good." But Leonard wasn't finished. "Harper, the board wants you to consider taking a larger leadership role." Harper blinked. "Bigger than the transition team?" Leonard smiled. "They want you to become interim CEO." Harper stared at him, stunned into silence. She had walked into that company as a trembling wife. She had walked out as a survivor. And now they were offering her the highest seat in the building Colton once ruled like a god. "Me?" she whispered, uncertain. "I'm not." Leonard cut her off gently. "You are exactly the person who should lead. You've seen the worst. You value integrity, and the company needs a heart yours." Harper pressed a hand to her chest, overwhelmed. "I need time to think." Leonard nodded. "Take all the time you need." That afternoon, Harper took Ella to the gardens. Sunlight filtered through the trees, dancing across the stroller as Ella cooed and reached for leaves. The simple joy in her daughter's eyes grounded Harper more than any board meeting ever could. She sat on a bench, watching the breeze ruffle Ella's soft hair, and allowed herself to imagine a future not controlled, not fearful, but chosen. Isaac joined her quietly, hands tucked into his pockets. "Heard the news," he said gently. Harper didn't look up. Everyone heard the news. Isaac chuckled softly. "It's big, Harper, but you don't have to decide today." Harper sighed. "I don't know if I'm capable of leading a company." Isaac sat beside her. "You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be honest, and you already are." She met his gaze, searching for doubt. There was none. Isaac's confidence wasn't loud or flashy. It was steady, the kind she never had from Colton. After a few moments, Harper whispered, "I'm scared of messing up." Isaac nodded. "Good. Fear means you'll make thoughtful choices. Power without fear creates people like Colton." Harper absorbed his words slowly. They made sense. Real sense. As Ella drifted into a peaceful nap, Harper walked deeper into the garden. She let her fingers graze the petals of blooming roses. Life, growth, renewal. That was the world she wanted for her daughter, for herself. When she returned to the bench, she found Isaac talking softly to Ella, who had woken and stared at him with wide curiosity. Harper watched them with a warmth spreading in her chest. "Isaac," she said softly, approaching, "what if I did take the position?" He looked up, eyes softening. "Then you'd lead with compassion. Something that company has needed for a long time." Harper felt her breath steady. For so long, the future had been a threat. Now it felt like an invitation. She knelt beside Ella's stroller, brushing her daughter's cheek gently. "I think," she whispered, "I'm finally ready to build something better." Isaac stepped closer, voice tender. "You already are." Harper lifted her gaze toward the horizon. Tomorrow, everything would change, but this time, because she chose it. Harper woke on the morning of the board's final vote with a sense of clarity she had never felt before. The sun lifted through the curtains in warm stripes, casting soft gold across Ella's sleeping form. Today would decide not only the future of Drake Innovations, but the future she would build for her daughter. She dressed slowly, choosing a simple cream blouse and a navy blazer, clothing that reminded her of strength without pretense. As she buttoned the cuffs, she felt the shift within herself, quiet, steady, and undeniably real. She was no longer running from her past. She was ready to lead. Leonard met her in the foyer, pride brightening his features. He offered his arm, not out of tradition, but out of respect. Together they walked toward the waiting convoy, guards standing at attention as the gates opened. Unlike the day she fled the Drake estate, Harper felt no heaviness in her chest. She carried no fear. Isaac waited by the SUV, holding the door for her with a warm steadiness she had come to depend on. "You're going to change everything today," he said softly. Harper inhaled, letting his confidence seep into her bones before she nodded and stepped inside. The headquarters buzzed with nervous anticipation when Harper arrived. Employees paused mid-conversation as she passed, their faces shifting from uncertainty to relief. They knew the company needed healing, and somehow Harper embodied that hope. In the boardroom, cameras were set up for the official announcement. Claire handed Harper the final documents and whispered, "This is your moment." Harper glanced at the signature line, then raised her gaze to the board members whose expressions held trust she once thought impossible. Her heart beat steadily strong, grounded. She signed the document naming her interim CEO. Applause erupted, filling the room with renewed purpose. After the ceremony, Harper stepped onto the rooftop terrace overlooking the skyline. The wind brushed her hair as she took in the sweeping view of Los Angeles, vast, alive, waiting. Isaac joined her minutes later, holding 2 cups of tea. "How does it feel?" he asked. Harper took the cup, smiling softly. "Like I'm finally standing in my own life," she answered. Isaac studied her quietly, admiration warming his expression. "You earned this," he said. Harper looked out toward the horizon. For the first time, the future no longer frightened her. It felt open. It felt hers. It felt possible. That evening, the Avery compound filled with soft music and gentle conversation. A small gathering of close allies and staff had assembled to honor Harper's new role. Leonard delivered a quiet toast, his voice thick with emotion as he spoke of Harper's resilience and the legacy she would shape. Harper listened, humbled, remembering the terrified woman who once hid bruises beneath long sleeves. She lifted her glass, thanking everyone for believing in her when she could barely believe in herself. Isaac stood beside her throughout the celebration, steady and kind, offering silent reassurance every time their eyes met. Later that night, Harper slipped away to check on Ella, who slept peacefully beneath a soft pink blanket. Watching her daughter breathe in tiny rhythms reminded Harper of why she had fought so hard and why she would continue fighting every day forward. She kissed Ella's forehead, whispering a promise of a life filled with safety, joy, and opportunity. When she stepped back into the hallway, she found Isaac waiting, hands tucked in his pockets. "You okay?" he asked softly. Harper nodded, a gentle smile forming. "For the first time," she said, "I really think I will be." So our story has finally come to an end. And if you're still here with me in this moment, my friend, it means something in this journey touched your heart in a real way. And maybe that's the true lesson hidden inside Harper's story. Life will break us, shake us, and sometimes push us into darkness we never asked for. But, as Marcus Aurelius wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Harper's pain didn't stop her, it shaped her. It taught her that silence protects no one, that courage is built one breath at a time, and that healing is not about forgetting, but about choosing yourself again and again. If her story reminded you of your own strength, if it whispered to a part of you that's been hurting or waiting, then let that be your sign. You deserve safety. You deserve peace. And you deserve a life that honors your worth. If this message speaks to you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us continue creating stories that stay with you long after the screen fades to black. Let's keep walking this journey together.